Let's see the model of the larynx and try to identify some structures in this model. So this is the hyoid bone, this is the thyroid cartilage, this is the cricoid cartilage. So in the thyroid cartilage there are two laminae which fuse in the center and give a prominence on the top known as the laryngeal prominence, also known as Adam's apple. The two laminae which do not fuse at the upper end, they form a notch on the superior aspect known as the superior laryngeal notch or the superior thyroid notch, this notch over here. In between the hyoid bone and the thyroid cartilage you will see a membrane numbered 8 here. This is the thyrohyoid membrane. This thyrohyoid membrane will be thickened in the middle to form a ligament, the median ligament, and on the lateral aspect also it will be thickened to form the lateral ligaments. Now talking about the thyroid cartilage, the anterior two laminae are fusing. If you look at the posterior aspect of the thyroid cartilage, the laminae are free. They are seen as a upper horn or the upper cornu, lower horn or a lower cornu. So you can appreciate this number 10 here, structure written. This is a ligament between the cricoid cartilage and the thyroid cartilage. Now again on the side you have this oblique line. The oblique line will give attachment to different muscles like the inferior constrictors of the pharynx. You will have the thyrohyoid. All these muscles, they take origin from this oblique line. Now turning on to the lateral side again, here this is how you will see the thyrohyoid muscle. Now piercing the thyrohyoid membrane you are having the superior laryngeal artery, and there is this nerve with it, the internal laryngeal nerve. Right. Externally, you're seeing the relation of the thyroid gland. It's not exactly placed on the thyroid cartilage. The thyroid gland, its isthmus lies on the upper rings of the trachea, and the lateral expansion is towards the thyroid cartilage. You can see the lobe of thyroid projecting towards the thyroid cartilage, not directly lying onto the thyroid. Now externally, what all you can see is a membrane now between the thyroid cartilage and the cricoid cartilage, numbered 11 here, number 11. This will be the cricothyroid membrane. Another membrane between the cricoid and the trachea is the cricotracheal membrane. So the membranes are labeled as 11 and 12. Cricothyroid membrane, number 11, and cricotracheal membrane. So these membranes, we can puncture them if we have to establish emergency airways. Right. Now what is the extent of this larynx? So we say it extends below the hyoid bone up to the cricoid cartilage. So that means this cricoid cartilage is at the level of C6 cervical vertebrae. Now let's have a look posteriorly. Posteriorly we will see this expansion here, a leaf-like projection. This is the epiglottis, right? Epiglottis is exactly seen at the root of the tongue, behind the tongue. So here, this is where the tongue is attached. So between the tongue and the epiglottis, these depressions here, these are the valliculae. So one vallicula, this is another vallicula. So epiglottis, and here you will have the tongue. So this depression here, this is the vallicula. On the sides of the epiglottis, between epiglottis and thyroid cartilage here, this gap where my finger is pointing, let me put a probe there. This is the pyriform. This is the vallicula, this full extension that we see here. This full thing is the vallicula on the side of the tongue and epiglottis. Here between the arytenoid, the epiglottis and the thyroid. This gap, which is marked by green here, this is the pyriform fossa. The pyriform fossa is marked green in this zone. Now epiglottis, you are seeing on the sides, this fold, these are known as airy from arytenoid, epiglottic, airy epiglottic folds. In the folds, these elevations are by the corniculate and the cuneiform cartilages. So you can see these elevations here. Okay. Now this posterior expanded portion here is of the cricoid cartilage. It is anteriorly thin as a rim, so you will call it as an arch. Posteriorly expanded is called as lamina. On top of the lamina here, this triangular piece of cartilage, which is bilateral, this is the arytenoid. Arytenoid, it has on its apex attachment with the cartilage, corniculate cartilage here. It has two processes, muscular process and then one which is hidden here anteriorly, known as a vocal process, and vocal ligament will arise from it, which is going towards the thyroid cartilage. Now, what else do you see posteriorly? Our group of muscles now. This is posterior cricoarytenoid. Anteriorly, the only muscle of the larynx that will be seen here from the cricoid to thyroid, this is cricothyroid muscle. This is the tensor of the larynx, tensor of the vocal cords. It's present externally, supplied by external laryngeal nerve. Now let's open it and see what lies inside. So when you look at the cavity of the larynx, there are two zones. From the apex of the epiglottis up to a margin which is folded here. This full zone, this mucous membrane here, this full zone, this is known as the quadrangular membrane. The lower border of the quadrangular membrane will form the vestibular fold, also known as your false vocal cord. Now lower down behind the cricoid cartilage, another set of membrane is present known as conus elasticus. Upper part of conus elasticus forms the vocal fold or the true vocal cords. Under it you will have the vocal ligament and you have the vocalis muscle. Now between the vestibular and the vocal folds here, you will have this gap known as the ventricle of the larynx, also known as sinus of Morgagni. It has the extension backwards forming the saccule known as the oil can of the larynx. It has got glands which secrete oily secretions for lubrication of our vocal cords. So these structures you have to identify. Now I will bring on this model here. So we have to identify, this is a hyoid bone. The first cartilage of the larynx that will be seen here, this is the epiglottis. So when you take a bolus of food, the epiglottis will close down like a lid, the laryngeal inlet, so that food is pressed back towards the esophagus and it doesn't go in the laryngeal cavity. Second cartilage, the big one that you are seeing here, this is the thyroid cartilage. This is the notch. This is the laryngeal prominence as number 15. On the side, now appreciate this line, this is the oblique line. And these are the two horns or the cornu. This is the upper and this is the lower. See the upper one forming a joint with the hyoid bone. Lower down, with help of a ligament, it is attached to the cricoid cartilage. Now look at the cricoid cartilage, the anterior rim of it, the arch, and posteriorly it's expanded to form the lamina. Now on the lamina posteriorly there is this muscle which is arising from the cricoid posterior aspect and attaching to the muscular process of arytenoid. This is posterior cricoarytenoid. Right. Now you have the lateral lateral cricoarytenoid muscle here. You will have two more set of muscle here, the oblique arytenoids and the transverse arytenoids. The only muscle to be seen externally is here. This is the cricothyroid, originating from the arch of the cricoid and attaching to the lower aspect of the lamina of the thyroid cartilage. Now here you can appreciate that the cricothyroid membrane is there. The cricotracheal membrane is also seen, and beyond this level now tracheal cartilages are seen. So this is what you have to identify in the model of the larynx. One more thing that you have to see is that what you can see here, these are the folds. The first layer of fold that you will be able to see this is a vocal fold actually, which you are seeing here, arising from the vocal process of arytenoid going towards the thyroid, and the gap between the entry point here, this is known as the rima glottidis. A similar gap in the upper fold, if it was present, the first vocal cord, that gap's exactly like this, that is known as rima vestibuli. So what you're seeing here is the rima glottidis. Now in this model again for the trachea, you're seeing that the trachea is arising from below the cricoid cartilage level. 15 to 20 C-shaped cartilages, hyaline in nature, are forming it. From C6 up to T4, at the level of T4, it bifurcates into the right bronchus, principal bronchus, and left principal bronchus. If you look posteriorly, the cartilage is not complete ring, it is open. It is bridged by fibrous tissue and a muscle known as trachealis. This is exactly at the posterior aspect of the trachea, and esophagus is related directly behind the trachea. Now looking at these tracheal division here, so this is your tracheobronchial tree. So trachea from C6 till T4. T4, this division here is known as the carina, the first carina or the first division which is seen here. Look at the difference between the right and the left principal bronchus. The right one is shorter, it's wider, and it's in direct alignment with the trachea. So any foreign body which is lodged inside will be found lodged into the right bronchus. Left one is longer, it is narrower, and it's more obliquely placed in alignment with the trachea. Now on the right side you will see there are three secondary bronchi for the three lobes that take division here, so 1, 2 and 3. On the left side you're seeing the principal bronchus dividing into two secondary bronchus, or the two secondary bronchi for the upper lobe and the lower lobe. Then beyond this we will have these segmental or the lobar bronchi. We say 10 and 10 on each side, and then we will have the respiratory bronchioles, and then alveolar sac, and so on.